so many of our representatives for being here. Senator John Bozeman. John, you're here someplace. Hi, John. Thank you. Senator Mike Crapo. Thank you, Mike. Senator Steve Daines. Senator Hoeven. Thank you. They're all here. Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith. Cindy, thank you very much. Senator James Lankford. James. Thank you, James. Senator Pat Roberts. He loves those farms. He loves the farmers like I do. Representative Diane Black. Diane, thank you. Representative Kevin Brady with our new tax bill. How's it coming, Kevin? Good? Representative Mike Conaway. Mike? Thank you, Mike. Representative Dan Newhouse. Thank you, Dan. Representative Kristi Noem. I have to call her governor now. That was a great win. Thank you, Kristi. Representative David Reichert. David, thank you. So we had a big day, very big. We met right here at the White House to launch a new phase in the relationship between the United States and the European Union, a phase of close friendship, of strong trade relations in which both of us will win, of working better together for global security and prosperity, and of fighting jointly against terrorism. The United States and the European Union together count for more than 830 million citizens and more than 50% of the global GDP. In other words, together we're more than 50% of trade. If we team up, we can make our planet a better, more secure, and more prosperous place. Already today, the United States and the European Union have a $1 trillion bilateral trade relationship, the largest economic relationship anywhere in the world. We want to further strengthen this trade relationship to the benefit of all American and European citizens. This is why we agreed today, first of all, to work together towards zero tariffs, zero non-tariff barriers, and zero subsidies on non-auto industrial goods. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We will also work to reduce barriers and increase trade in services, chemicals, pharmaceuticals, medical products, as well as soybeans. Soybeans is a big deal. And the European Union is going to start almost immediately to buy a lot of soybeans. They're a tremendous market. Buy a lot of soybeans from our farmers in the Midwest primarily. So I thank you for that, Jean-Claude. This will open markets for farmers and workers, increase investment, and lead to greater prosperity in both the United States and the European Union. It will also make trade fairer and more reciprocal, my favorite word, reciprocal. Secondly, we agreed to a strengthening of our strategic cooperation with respect to energy. The European Union wants to import more liquefied natural gas, LNG, from the United States, and they're going to be a very, very big buyer. We're going to make it much easier for them, but they're going to be a massive buyer of LNG, so they'll be able to diversify their energy supply, which they want very much to do, and we have plenty of it. Thirdly, we agreed today to launch a close dialogue on standards in order to ease trade, reduce bureaucratic obstacles, and slash costs dramatically. Fourthly, we agreed to join forces to protect American and European companies from better and really better than ever. We've never done like we're doing, I can say, from the standpoint of the United States. We've never done this well, but we're going to do a lot better after we do this deal and other deals that we're currently working on. Likewise, the European Union is going to do better, stronger, bigger. We will therefore work closely together with like-minded partners to reform the WTO and to address unfair trading practices, including intellectual property theft, forced technology transfer, industrial subsidies, distortions created by state-owned enterprises, and overcapacity. We decided to set up immediately an executive working group of very intelligent people on both sides. They'll be our closest advisors, and they're going to carry out this joint agenda. In addition, it will identify short-term measures to facilitate commercial exchanges and assess existing tariff measures and what we can do about that to the betterment of both. While we are working on this, we will not go against the spirit of this agreement unless either party terminates the negotiation. So we're starting the negotiation right now, but we know very much where it's going. We also will resolve the steel and aluminum tariff issues, and we will resolve retaliatory tariffs. We have some tariffs that are retaliatory, and that will get resolved as part of what we're doing. And with that, Jean-Claude, please.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, when I was invited by the President to the White House, I had one intention. I had the intention to make a deal today, and we made a deal today. We have identified a number of areas on which to work together. Work towards zero tariffs on industrial goods. That was my main intention, to propose to come down to zero tariffs on industrial goods. We've decided to strengthen our cooperation on energy. The EU will build more terminals to import liquefied natural gas from the US. This is also a message for others. We agreed to establish a dialogue on standards. As far as agriculture is concerned, the European Union can import more soybeans from the US, and it will be done. And we also agreed to work together on the reform of the WTO. This, of course, is on the understanding that as long as we are negotiating, unless one party would stop the negotiations, we will hold off further tariffs. And we reassess existing tariffs on steel and aluminium. This was a good, constructive meeting. Thank you, Donald.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Jean-Claude. And I just want to conclude by saying this was a very big day for free and fair trade. Very big day indeed. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Thank you.
You already have it. President Trump and the President of the European Commission, Jean-Claude Juncker, announcing that they've reached some agreement on how to go forward on trade. I want to bring in Terry Moran, who's at the White House. Terry, listening to both leaders right there, what it sounds like is actually a de-escalation agreement. Not a lot of concrete measures announced by either president, although the Europeans said they're going to be buying more soybeans, but they're basically going to hold off on new tariffs and escalation in the trade war as they talk about figuring out some way to get to zero tariffs and a new trading relationship.
That's right. This is a, as you say, it's an aspirational deal. They agreed to begin negotiations and work together towards a regime of no tariffs on industrial goods between the United States and Europe. That's what triggered this, remember. What made President Trump angry was that the steel and aluminum protectionist measures in Europe, he believed were hurting the industrial core of the United States, which supported him and which he wanted to deliver something to. And that, at least, is what has begun here. I'll tell you, there's no question that Wall Street is relieved because the prospect of yet another trade war. Remember, President Trump has one ongoing right now with China. One with Canada and Mexico seems to be in the offing. And there was one certainly cooking between the United States and Europe. The relief of that pressure sent the stock market skyrocketing today because this is something we haven't seen from President Trump. He's willing to back down a little bit on his punitive protectionist agenda and at least agree to talk.
Yeah, it went up about 150 points after word of the potential agreement leaked. I want to bring in Tara Palmieri as well in Washington, but has also spent a lot of time covering the European Commission, the European Union. What a difference a couple of weeks makes. Tara, the president was in Europe about 10 days ago calling the European Union a foe.
Yep, that's right, George. And Jean-Claude Juncker came to town ready to make a deal. But yesterday, when I spoke with U.S. officials, they seemed reluctant that his plan, which was to either offer a smaller trade deal on just industrial products or get rid of tariffs altogether on cars, would actually be something that the president would take to and be interested in. And it sounds like he is, because he's been very adamant about saying he doesn't want tariffs, tariff barriers, or subsidies. But it seems that he was able to make some sort of deal to de-escalate, and eventually what they really wanted was for him to come home saying that there will be no tariffs on cars. The German car makers were really nervous about that, and they wanted to make sure that President Trump didn't follow through and place a 25% tariff on that. But yeah, it's a real change from last week, and we'll see where this actually leads to. As we know, the U.S. and the European Union, before President Trump took office, was working on a really broad transatlantic trade agreement, and that fell apart. That was one of the first things that President Trump pulled out of when he became president.
Okay, Tara, thanks. But for now, no new tariffs. President Trump calls it a big day at the White House, announcing new trade talks with the European Commission and the European Union. We'll have much more tonight on World News Tonight with David Muir. I'll see you tomorrow on GMA.
And thank you, George. You are watching ABC News Live. We're going to have continuing coverage right now. You just saw President Trump in the Rose Garden there making a big announcement on tariffs. This has been a question for several weeks. Would there be a break between the United States and the European Union? We saw him there with President Juncker of the European Commission. They've talked about non-auto industrial goods that would fall under these tariffs. More soybeans. The president's saying soybeans are great, very important. That really had been something that many White House officials were saying they were hoping the president could do, thaw the ice with the European Union.
Right, exactly. Many White House officials were saying that, Republicans on Capitol Hill, business people, and I think this is a step in the right direction for him and his supporters, and that's exactly what he announced today. But it's interesting because right before this announcement, the White House blasted out this press release saying that the EU has treated farmers very unfairly. So it seems like they've come to a bit of an agreement today.
Yeah, I know. We've been watching that. I think the stock market, just closed not too long ago. We do have the big board of where the numbers had closed, and we saw it spike just in the last little bit. The closing bell, 25,414, 172 points up. ABC's Rebecca Jarvis, our chief business correspondent, is joining us over the phone. She was watching those numbers climb in the last half hour with us. Rebecca, what do you make of this big picture? A win for Trump today?
Well, I would call what you saw in the stock market a relief rally. The feeling that perhaps we've averted a trade war, at least as far as the EU is concerned. This idea that there are potential concessions now on the table that was floated just before the stock market closed, that really is what pushed the Dow today up about 150 points on the news. It would have been an otherwise lackluster day. In the backdrop of Wall Street, in the backdrop of every economist thinking about what's happening in the economy right now, is this question of what happens if there is truly a trade war, something that's prolonged between the United States and our various trading partners. And this takes some of that risk off of the table for now.
Rebecca, stay with me. I want to go to ABC's Terry Moran, who is in the Rose Garden for today's announcement. Terry, you spent a lot of time covering the European Union. Talk about how vital the trading partners between the United States and the EU are. So we know that these are non-auto industrial goods. We know soybeans. We know there's also going to be now increased purchasing of LNG, liquefied natural gas. All sounds pretty good.
These are two of the three largest trading blocs in the world. Combined, you heard the president talk 800 million people and 50% of world GDP. So this is a crucial relationship to both sides. President Trump has a trade agenda. He ran on it. Pretty much everybody in the country could have told you what it was, that he was going to get tough with trading partners to bring jobs back. And he's got a political agenda. He's got political instincts. And I think what you saw today was an intersection of the two, because he's been taking trade measures, protectionist trade measures, proudly tweeting out that trade wars are good and tariffs are great. And really over the past week or so, certainly from Republicans in farm states, he's been getting blowback. The retaliatory measures on on agriculture have really bitten into American farmers' incomes. And he's hearing that, he's feeling it. And so here, in his classic improvisational style, he just decided to do a quasi deal. It sounds better than it is when you look at it. There's nothing super nailed down here, and both sides agree they can walk away from the table if these negotiations don't proceed. But I think he needed to relieve some political pressure, as well as concerns on Wall Street and elsewhere, that his agenda was not going to be good for the country's economy.
And certainly coming into the midterms, a big issue that Republicans up for re-election and on the ballot were facing coming into the fall. Terry Moran, I know they're removing you from the Rose Garden, as they often do after these events, quite quickly. I know you're a little hot out there, a little delayed. Terry, thank you. But I do want to go back to Rebecca Jarvis real quick, because Rebecca, one of the things they talked about as part of that announcement with the president of the EU Commission is the fact that they were hoping to reform the World Trade Organization. How realistic is that?
Well, I don't know how realistic it is, although we have both sides now, both President Trump and Juncker, talking about the fact that they're agreeing to reform. There had been this speculation that the president was potentially willing to withdraw. That would be the worst case scenario for those who buy into the idea of that the World Trade Organization is a governing body that helps facilitate trade internationally. And so that is especially meaningful when you look at it from the standpoint of economists and market participants. They see that as especially meaningful information to come out of today's talks. Also, the idea that there will be some sort of resolution around the steel and aluminum tariffs. I think one thing that's still on the table that it doesn't necessarily, this conversation today doesn't necessarily take auto tariffs off the table. Now, maybe that was just too hard to come to a conclusion around, too big of an issue to deal with, but those auto tariffs, if they still are out there and still are a possibility, that's something that a lot of automakers around the globe have been talking about as a major concern, because it jacks up the price of cars both in the United States as well as European cars.
Rebecca Jarvis, keeping an eye on all of this today. Thank you, as always, for your insights. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
We're going to move on now. If you're just joining us, you are watching ABC News Live. A lot of things happening around Washington today, one of which is some news on Vladimir Putin. We thought he'd be coming to the White House in 2018. Well, check your calendar. Apparently, according to National Security Advisor John Bolton, he's now not coming until maybe 2019. They're going to observe that, Catherine, after the first of the year.
Yeah, that's what the statement says, that it will be after the first of the year, which coincides with when the midterms will be over. And of course, Trump has said that he thinks that Russia's meddling in the Democratic elections. So there's some interesting language there. But the reality is kind of how this all unfolded. You remember Sarah Sanders announced this on Twitter, that they had extended this invitation, which the optics of that were a bit strange because it left the door open for him to turn it down. But, you know, we've been pinging sources about how this all went down internally. Did Vladimir Putin accept it? Did he? What was the communication? And just yesterday, John, when we asked for an update on this, an NSC official said that discussions were still underway between the two national security staffs.
Yeah, and this all started going back to Helsinki. Unfortunately, we have someone with us who was there. ABC's White House correspondent Tara Palmieri. Tara, you were watching that press conference. It feels like it was 10 years ago. I think it's maybe 10 days ago at this point. You know, where are we right now with the Trump administration and the Putin relationship? You know, as Catherine was just talking about, it certainly felt like they were trying to do something into the fall, but they really were feeling the heat here, Tara, over the last couple weeks.
Right, and it's giving Secretary of State Mike Pompeo a little political cover today when he meets with the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. He's meeting with them right now, and I'm sure he's getting a grilling, especially because they want to know, what did President Trump agree to in that meeting with Vladimir Putin? And we've seen trickles of information coming out, but mainly from the Russian side. And we still are still trying to figure out what kind of deals were struck. Vladimir Putin says that they are going to help with Syria and stopping rebels on the border, but, you know, this is obviously still a great mystery, but by holding off this meeting, he's holding off a bit of criticism and perhaps trying to change the narrative. Yesterday, you just heard him say that the Russians are going to try to help the Democrats because he's been too tough on them. He's clearly trying some new spin. And this is just the latest, but it's probably a smart political cover, especially before the midterms.
And I do just want to jump around a little bit, only because we do have Secretary of State Mike Pompeo up on Capitol Hill right now. He's had a little bit of a contentious hearing up there, and it opened with some fireworks that he had with New Jersey Senator Bob Menendez. Let's take a listen to that.
Ballistic missiles. I don't see the other two coming to the table, frankly, to do that. And so I think in moving forward, I think it's just important that you...
Has the president told you what he and President Putin discussed in their 2-hour closed-door meeting in Helsinki? You could put your microphone on.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. The presidents have a prerogative to choose who's in meetings or not. I'm confident you've had private one-on-one meetings.
Did he tell you whether or not what happened in those 2 hours?
Yes, Senator. The predicate of your question implied some notion that there was something improper about having a one-on-one meeting. I completely disagree with the premise of your question. The president disclosed what he said to Vladimir Putin about Russian interference in our elections, and he said that he is confident that as a result of that conversation, Vladimir understands that it won't be tolerated.
And Tara, I know you were talking to sources over at the State Department about this. They knew this was going to be a tough hearing today.
Oh, for sure. And he's been prepped for it. He has a bit of a temper, and especially, so they sort of prepared him for that, that he would likely take a grilling. I mean, he saw the president last night. He wasn't in the room, though. Yeah. So whatever he knows is whatever President Trump tells him. So he can say, you know, I don't know. I wasn't told that, or use executive privilege, although I'm not sure that the Secretary of State can use that. But at the end of the day, he wasn't there, and that's the thing. We'll never know unless we get those translators.
Right. Well, that is definitely a question, Tara.
In that particular bit, you know, he said he had a number of conversations with Trump about the meeting, that they chatted about it in their larger meeting after. But the second part of that was that Pompeo said that he didn't speak to the translator and kind of downplayed the role of the translator. And of course, this comes as Democrats wanted to subpoena the translator, and that is not going to happen.
Yeah.
But an interesting contentious moment there with the flow of information.
Absolutely. No, and we've been watching this all day. That hearing, of course, is streaming right at abcnews.com and on the ABC app. You can take a look at that. Before we leave you, there's another story that we've been tracking since late last night, and that is the secret audio tape between then candidate Donald Trump and his longtime personal attorney, Michael Cohen. You've heard the tape, maybe. If you haven't, take a listen to it. We'll talk on the other side.
Let me know what's happening, okay? Oh. Maybe because of this it would be better if you didn't go, you know? Maybe because of this, for that one, you know, I think what we should do is get rid of this because it's so false what they're saying. It's such bullshit. I think this goes away quickly. I think it's probably better. Do the Charleston thing, just this time. Yeah, in 2 weeks it's fine. I think right now it's better. You know? Okay, honey. You take care of yourself. Thanks, Pam. Yep, I'm proud of you. So long, bye. What's up, Mike?
Great poll, by the way.
Yeah.
Seen it. Great poll.
Making progress.
Big time.
And you guys are a good guy.
Oh, Pastor Scott?
I can't believe he's... No, Pastor Scott. What's happening?
Oh, no. He's...
Can we use him anymore?
Oh, yeah. 100... No, you're talking about Mark Burns. We told him to...
I don't mean that. Mark Burns, can we use him anymore?
No.
Richard Lefrak, I'm sorry, Richard Lefrak just called. He just had, we have a chance, he had an idea for you.
Okay. So we got served from the New York Times. I told you this regarding to unseal the divorce papers with Ivana. We're fighting it. Kaslowitz is going to...
You'll never be able to get that done.
Never. Kaslowitz doesn't think they'll ever be able. They don't have a...
Give me a Coke, please.
They don't have a legitimate purpose.
And you have a woman that doesn't want to unseal.
Correct.
So you've been handling it.
Yes, and it's all...
That's been going on for a while.
For about 2-3 weeks now.
All you have to do is delay it for...
Even after that, it's not going to ever be opened. There's no purpose for it. Told you about Charleston. I need to open up a company for the transfer of all of that info regarding our friend David, you know, so that I'm going to do that right away. I've actually come up and I've spoken to Alan Weisselberg about how to set the whole thing up with
So what are we going to pay?
funding. Yes, and it's all the stuff. All the stuff, because you never know where that company, you never know where he's going to be. Correct. So I'm all over that, and I spoke to Alan about it when it comes time for the financing, which will be.
Listen, what financing?
We'll have to pay you. So
I'll pay with cash.
no. I got no. Hey, Don, how are you?
So that is the tape. Everybody has been talking about it since it broke last night. And really what that centers around is a transaction between David Pecker, the owner of AMI Media, they're the publishers of the National Enquirer, and a potential deal with Michael Cohen to buy back the story of Karen McDougal, who allegedly had a several-month-long affair with Donald Trump over a decade ago. That deal never went through, according to sources, but that recording, which took place somewhere in September of 2016 before the election, is the first time that we're really hearing that Trump knew about the affair, that it was out there, and that there was some sort of payment to buy Karen McDougal's silence. But what's fascinating about this, Catherine Falders, is that the fact that Michael Cohen was recording his boss, his client, Donald Trump.
Yes, and the president is also surprised by that. Rudy Giuliani said last night he was disappointed. He's tweeted about it, saying what kind of lawyer would tape a client? But the reality is Michael Cohen was known to tape clients, calls with reporters in general.
Right.
The president also recently, last week for the first time, really taking aim at Cohen over this recording, saying that it could be illegal. Well, you and I both know that New York is a one-party state, so
one-party consent, right.
One-party consent, so it's not illegal. Only one party has to agree to it. But yeah, the president was really taken off guard that this aired and that Michael Cohen and his lawyer, Lanny Davis, gave it to...
And Tara Palmieri, I mean, just this relationship that the president and Michael Cohen had. He was the fixer.
Right.
He proudly called himself Donald Trump's pit bull, said he would take a bullet for Trump.
Right.
That is a big difference from where this relationship is right now.
And remember when Paul Manafort was first charged, the White House said, oh, he was a small player on the campaign. He was a campaign manager. What are they going to say? Michael Cohen was barely his lawyer. He worked for the Trump Organization for how many years? 15 years? So, yeah, they have a really close relationship. Michael Cohen has remained loyal to him, even though he was passed over for a White House job. He privately told people that he did want to work in the White House, and he was really proud of the fact that he was the president's personal attorney. But all of these strikes against him, the Independence Day, when he changed his Twitter profile, his interview with George saying, I will stick with my family, and now this. I mean, clearly he's showing, hey, I'm not going to stick my neck out for you anymore, and that's a really big change for them.
We are suddenly seeing daylight between the two of them, and it is quite stunning, according to many people who have been around these two individuals for quite some time. Tara Palmieri, thank you. Appreciate all of your help today. Catherine, always fun to join you here. And thank you. We're going to have much more on that story tonight on ABC's World News. Make sure to download the ABC News app and always follow us at abcnews.com. I'm John Santucci. You're watching ABC News.